sharing my presentation here. Um, by the way, Verena, I saw you already sent your mini project, so thank you very much. Um, let's,
Yes, yes. I already sent it yesterday.
yeah. So for the
I,
rest,
I,
mhm,
I saw yesterday's class.
mhm,
Sorry, I saw the class that I was missing yesterday, and
mhm.
yeah, I heard Pierina, I heard Osmel, I heard, and I see that it's easy. Okay, this project is going to be easy. It's just that as I saw that I had the opportunity to hand it in to you till 11:59
Yes, of course.
tonight.
Don't worry.
It's, it's in
Uh,
progress. Okay,
this
I'm
this
almost there.
no, you still have time. This reminds me of professors. I remember one professor telling us she used to put to set the deadlines like at noon or 1 p.m. And she
Uh-huh.
said, because I don't want you guys to be there like at 3 a.m. because the deadline is at 6 or something like this. And, okay, thank you. But that's like taking, and you don't see it as one extra day. This is like one less day because you say, oh, I wish this was for the night and blah, blah, blah. But
Sí.
no worries. That was the purpose to
Oh,
give you enough time because we know all of you have lives, basically.
yeah, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, that's normal. Having a life should be normal at least. Going here, getting into the topic, starting our conversation, I can show you, you can imagine already with this why we, or many people think that what we're starting today is like the actual core of the program. Because as you see, where we will start discussing how to work on the four skills, the four linguistic skills, meaning listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So for today, I am expecting to finish the first 2 points in the agenda, which are listening with purpose. This is a big section. This is not just a couple of slides. This is a kind of a big section. And we will finish, if things go as expected, with incorporating technology into listening activities. Remember, this is flexible. So if we don't finish today, we just finish tomorrow. Or if we finish this with some time left, we can just continue with tomorrow's presentation, which is already finished. Because usually what I try to do is having the presentation ready, but then if changes are needed, that's what I do in the afternoon during my offline work. Right now, I'm really concentrating my efforts on the course. So if it is not today, we will start tomorrow with speaking. That is probably the the critical skill we need to address because that's the one we see the most. Of course, we speak all the time, and in the classroom we should be speaking all the time. But it is at the same time kind of difficult, especially when we consider all of these emotional aspects we have discussed connected to the process. And well, I don't think we will get to this, but either way, tomorrow we will discuss scaffolding and strategies related to speaking, specifically building confidence and promoting authentic speaking. And finally, we will be discussing developing classroom activities specifically for these two skills. You can imagine then that on Thursday we will discuss the two remaining skills. We will discuss um, reading and writing. So let's get to
Okay.
it.
Coffee, por favor.
The
Oh.
name of this part four is developing communicative skills. And I will start with, you see, this is a very nice title, I think, listening and speaking, partners in communication. Uh, I'm going to ask you now to do there in silence, that you can answer in the chat if you want, or if you want to open your microphone, that's also a good idea. I'm going to ask you here to determine whether each of the activities I'm listing develops primarily. listening and speaking, or both? So the first one is student gives directions to a lost tourist. The second one, the students watch a video to answer questions, kind of in a discussion. Then students role play an interview. A student prepares and delivers a short speech. Um, Students read a dialogue aloud. Learners brainstorm ideas for a group project. And I think there's one more. The learners listen to a peers story and ask follow-up. I think there's one more, yes. And a learner summarizes a podcast to a peer. Take a moment. Don't jump into
Okay.
conclusions, okay? Just take a moment and reflect the way this activity would be carried, how it would develop, and then you can think, okay, this primarily develops listening, speaking, or both of them. I'm gonna mute myself here. I'm gonna turn off my microphone, so you have a couple of minutes there to think.
Listen to the peers. Okay, I think I'm ready.
Okay, let's start with Pierina because I'm guessing yes, she wrote her answers. She says speaking, both, listening. What do you think, Alba? The
Well,
first
I
one?
think that most of these activities, they have to listen and then speak, except for the one it says students read a dialogue aloud.
Okay,
Uh, but I think most of them, yeah, all of them, except that one, if the person who's going to read um, is not starting class the first time, okay?
mhm,
If they read, of course, they're just going to speak, okay? They don't have to listen,
okay,
not necessarily. But the rest, they do have to listen and then speak. That's my opinion.
yeah, fair enough. And again, as I just read here, and somehow Pierina is on the same page because most of them are, according to Pierina's opinion, most of them include both. Um, so
By the
let's
way,
see.
hi, Pierina.
Uh,
Hi.
let's check my
Hello,
take.
hello. Good
Yes, yes.
morning. I'm
Um,
here.
let's check what I can tell you about this. Alba is already touching on some of the things, some of the topics, I would say, or the ideas we will be considering now. But first, I will ask you to continue your reflection, and then you get ready to share as well. Which tasks were more difficult to classify, or in other words, which one, in your opinion, was like a more gray area, if you want, or was more in a kind of a gray area when you say, okay, this is it, or this is it, and then you say, okay, both. Um, which ones clearly involve both? You see, this is also classified as both skills, but it was clear for you to say, no, this is, you're using both of them. No questions. And what patterns did you notice? I think, again, as I spoiled the idea, Alba is already diving into these ideas in her comment, or was in her comment. Oh. And what does this tell us about real communication? So again, what was more difficult to classify? Which one was easy to classify? What do you notice? And what do you think this is telling us about real communication in the classroom, of course?
Okay, may I answer or
Yeah, yeah,
Pierina?
go ahead.
Okay, which tasks were more difficult to classify? Well, reading, yeah, reading a dialogue, because uh, if you can read, of course, you have listened to a lot of the language. You know, if you can read, and I ask myself, well, but it could be a student that is not starting, okay, it's not starting to learn English, and he can read. So that was the difficult one for me to classify.
Mhm.
Number two, which ones clearly involve both listening and speaking? I think most of them, because if you don't get to listen to a language, then it's impossible for you to speak it. Okay. And what patterns do you notice? I think communication as a whole is that, okay, it's about that listening and speaking. And they're stick together, you know. I think you cannot separate them. Of course, the last one says, what does this, okay. Um, wait. There was one of the things you proposed that, of course, the person was listening for sure and then answering. It was one about a postcast, okay,
Mhm.
that a student had to speak about a podcast. Of course, they had to listen in this activity and then speak about it. And well, yeah, the last thing is that communication, real communication is about that, you know, listening and answering questions. And that's so important. If you get to listen and be able to answer questions and ask questions and listen to the answers, then you can speak English. That's it.
Yeah. So you're not thinking
Yeah.
about accents, you're not thinking about British or American, you're thinking about your ability to exchange, right? Your ideas and receive and give information.
Oh, and you know, I'm going to tell you this, but not, I won't say this in class, okay? But I can say this here.
Mhm,
Uh, I know I'm not an American, I'm not a British, I'm just a second language speaker. That's it.
mhm,
I know that. I'm so conscious about that. And other people, you know, Americans or British or German or Chinese people that I have talked with them in English, of course, they know that I'm a second language speaker.
mhm.
That's for sure. That's all.
No, well, I can mention something on that now that I brought up this thing of languages or Englishes. Perina, do you agree with Alba? Is there something you may want to add? Okay, in the chat, thank you. Um, okay, well, you are getting ready to share. Oh, no, no, don't worry. We can just move on. Don't worry, Pierina. What I was going to mention is this is one of the things people talk when they refer to microaggressions. I don't really like that, but it's interesting the way some people from, like, let's say native speakers, when they say, "Oh, you have such a good English," and that's when you say, What's that supposed to mean? Like, how should I sound?" Or and this is not only for us. This is something that research has been. There's a lot of articles talking about how, especially African Americans, even talking about Obama, when they said, "Oh, he's so articulate, but he used to speak like a regular politician." But now, because he's black, uh, people didn't expect him to be so, articulated and eloquent and whatever you want. So it is interesting because many people say that, and this is why the thing with this kind of, you know, such a negative view on this, because for some people, or for many people, that's just innocent.
Yes.
But some people can take it in a very negative way. So to avoid hurting anybody, it is better to to stay out of it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
all right. So let's move
Yeah.
on then,
No,
because
but
yes.
I really liked that when I read Sevan's rules, there you can read that we're teaching English as a second language, and
Mhm.
that's the truth. Nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that.
yeah, you can. Yeah, I went through the stages when I was younger, since I was watching so many sitcoms. I truly wanted and expected myself to sound like, I don't know, like Ross Geller or Charlie Harper. But that's not the case. And you get a lot, well, in my case, if it is a foreign language, you get to be more fluent and confident. And when you accept you are you, that's it.
Yeah,
Uh,
of course. Of course.
yeah. Uh, so let's start with this. As Alba said, I think this is the title for the section because communication doesn't involve one. All of them are interconnected. One helps the other, and this is why they are kind of separated into two blocks here, because listening and speaking are partners in communication as much as reading and writing are also partners in communication, like very close partners. So even when we focus on listener speaking individually, we are not ignoring the fact that we are designing for interaction, meaning making a learner agency, which uh, can benefit from us paying special attention to each one of these skills separately. Either ways, in the end, we will see how they can be interconnected. So today and tomorrow, as I said, but today we will explore how to teach listening with intention, which is the most important part without losing, the bigger communicative picture. So this is like a statement of purpose here. Keeping in mind the essence in three words here, listening is not passive reception. And this is the same that happens with reading. Probably there will be some text, some similar reflection when we get to reading, as much as reading is not passive. If you're just going through the words when you're reading, you are decoding, and that's pretty much it. And the same happens with listening. You can just be hearing somebody and not getting anything out of it. Um, so listening, on the other hand, is rather an active, interpretive process involving attention, prediction, decoding, of course, and meaning making. This goes beyond grammar, beyond a person using the language, right? And this, of course, probably reminds us of the el esquema de la comunicación de first grade, en primer grado, ¿verdad? Emisor, receptor, canal y todo lo demás, que entonces después uno decía, pero ¿por qué en cierto grado ya no hablan de emisor y receptor, sino de interlocutor? Because there's a big change in the connotation of these words, because we're not, as Alba was saying, we're not just sending a message. We are in the middle of a dynamic process that involves many things to actually get. the message the other person is trying to send. So again, as I said, this is talking about listening with purpose. Not all listening tasks serve the same goal. Different purposes require different teacher moves, different scaffolds, and different expectations. I gave you an example last week. I think it was like on day one or day two, uh, when we discussed translanguaging or the possibility of using Spanish in the classroom to make it simple. Uh, and we said, for example, in a listening comprehension exercise, what if the student answers the comprehension questions in Spanish? Is that right or wrong? Well, it depends on your purpose. It depends on your goal, because if the student is giving you the right answer, is the problem the fact that he's using Spanish or the fact that he's actually showing understanding or comprehension? Um, that's just an example of how this conversation can get deeper. Um, let's get to it then, because first we're talking about extensive listening. We will see now three types of listening, each one again with a different purpose, with a different procedure, and as a consequence, with different scaffolds and teacher moves. Extensive listening means listening to longer input for general understanding, right? For example, enjoyment, exposure, often outside the classroom. And this is a typical recommendation for all students, but particularly for level one students, those who are like true beginners. And one typical advice is to surround yourself with the language, right? And one thing is using extensive listening. When you tell them, hey, do you like series? Yes, go and watch your series, but don't avoid watching them in Spanish with the dub. Just watch them in the original language. Do you like movies? Same situation. If you're listening to music, same thing. But then again, if you can get the lyrics, that's even better. So you start reading and you see how everything is starting to be interconnected there. But this is
Yes.
extensive listening, either for enjoyment, for exposure, in even both. In the case when we are recommending that to our students at Ceban. I already gave you a couple of examples, but of course, this has podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube videos, stories, interviews, radio shows. As the word indicates, this demands or is connected to extension, longer formats. Purpose, as we said, this will be fluency. I'm sorry, fluency, but of course regarding listening. Uh, but again, the important part here is that the person is paying attention. If the person is not active or listening actively, well, actually, this was a common conversation we used to have with Miguel some years ago, with active listening, even talking about customer service to the people, at the front desk. Active listening, you need to really pay attention to the person. If not, then you have miscommunication or you don't even get anything out of it. So building fluency and confidence, developing global comprehension, and exposing learners to varied accents and natural speech. I just had a conversation with a friend who is trying to become a pilot, an airplane pilot. And that's a very expensive goal he has. And he was just telling me that he finished the operational part of the course. Let's say he already knows how to fly a plane, but there's a lot more to get the license. And he told me that one of the things he needs is the language certification. And that he told me the course is very expensive, of course, because this is very specific. But he was telling me that he met a woman, a teacher, who offers the course, and they were having that conversation. And he said that the listening part is one of the biggest components in the course. Of course, this is for a specific purpose, but the purpose is this one, exposing future pilots to the biggest variety of accents possible. Because in the end, all communication is you are in the air, you are uh, piloting a 400 million thing there with 300 lives on your back. So you better understand what the pilot from Pakistan
Yes.
is telling you. Um,
Yes.
and that's a very specific case, but this is how important exposure is. Of course, depending on your purposes. That's English for specific purposes. Um, then, building on this, we have a couple of extra notes for extensive listening. The first one is teacher moves. This is connected to scaffolding. This is what the teacher can do in this case. I already gave you some information. This is the first one is encouraging, like regular listening outside the classroom. When I teach book one, I mean, I'm like an uncle now, like an unk. I give the same recommendations. I make the same jokes to everybody. And I always tell them when you are on Sunday, when you're cleaning your apartment, when you're cleaning your house, doing the laundry, instead of listening to Chicas del Can, listen to Justin Bieber or something like this. Something, yeah. You see, Alba, uncle, and you will be an aunt because students don't laugh at the joke. Uh, but then you see, instead of Eddie Herrera,
No,
uh,
I do. I listen to Chicas del Can and
oh, thank you,
Diana
Katie.
and
Thank
everything. Yeah, I love merengue.
because that
Come
that
on,
gives you the
man.
energy.
I'm
That gives you the
I'm not a
necessary energy.
baby. I have
Okay,
culture.
okay,
I,
okay, but listen. I'm not saying that you cannot listen to Chicas del Can. It's just that it's funny because he's saying you want to learn English. Okay, you have to listen to another thing. That's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, but I thought that you said that I wasn't going to understand the joke because I'm too young.
Oh, okay, okay.
No, come on. I listen a lot of merengue. I love las chicas del can.
oh, you would be surprised. But I had a group last year at Sevam. I think they just graduated from the advanced integrated, actually. And I told them about Pastor Lopez, and most of them didn't remember Pastor Lopez. So,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
what does your family listen to in December? Like, like on Christmas? They're
Exactly.
like, no,
Exactly. I
I
don't
put
know
on my
if you have
headphones.
seen. Well, we like merengue, we like Pastor Lopez and stuff.
Mhm.
But do you know this? It's a show. I don't know. It's an event called Free Cover. You can find it
Yeah,
on
yeah,
YouTube. And, well, my parents love those. So every December is Free Cover, Free Cover, Free Cover Diana, Free Cover Miriam Cruz, Free Cover Ruby Perez.
yeah, yeah. I brought that here. Now that I'm here, I brought that and said my Venezuelan friends like, "What's that?" And say, "This is very Venezuelan." So take notes. This is what people
Oh
listen to.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
So, but you get the idea, right? So you can play them like a part of a song or something, so students, even true beginners, get a couple of words, and this even works for their empowerment, right? To say like, "Oh, I understood this and this." Like, okay, that's progress. So if you make it systematic, you have more chances of succeeding. And said, okay. Um, so yeah, encouraging them to listen to it. Then we have if you are assigning this as a task, the important part is what you do afterwards. And this is something we already discussed with integrated skills. You can have a listening. This is literally just listening to the podcast, to the video, to whatever you want. But what do you do afterwards? And that becomes, as Alba indicated before, that becomes an integrated skills thing, and because you're using speaking, so it becomes communicative, which is our goal, what we are going after all the time, how to make things communicative. And then, however, we need to keep in mind, avoid over testing, especially when we are beginning. The important part for them is to engage, again, to fall in love with the language, especially those students with a low self-efficacy. Remember, those who don't think they can achieve their goal, those who don't really want to learn the language, but need it for professional purposes, for example. So this is particularly important for them because probably a student who really likes the language doesn't need you telling him or her, hey, do you listen to American music? And then they have a long list. Oh, yeah, I love Adele. I love Justin Bieber. I don't know, whatever you want. So this is particularly, it is important, particularly important to avoid making or transforming this into something stressful. Um, and then talking about scaffolding directly, provide guiding questions before listening or provide context to the video if you are showing them or telling them to watch a video. Use visual aids. Remember, multimodality is one of the pillars we are supposed to take advantage of. Use visual aid or summaries to activate background knowledge. If you are talking about I'm talking a lot here about first level students because I think extensive listening is of particular benefit for them because of exposure, the exposure kind situation. Offer sentence frames for retelling or summarizing. Uh, Even this doesn't have to be formal. Remember the importance of formative assessment. Focusing on the process. Maybe you don't need to tell them to sing a song. I really like that because I was always a very shy person, but maybe completing the lyrics. And there's actually mm, a game, kind of a website. Well, it also has an app, but this lyricstraining.com, I knew about this like years and years ago. It still exists. And I still, whenever I remember about that, I show the platform to students. And that's an interesting thing to do for them because it is lyricstraining.com offers. You can go and first you choose the language you want to practice, of course, and then you can look for the video of a song of an artist you like, for instance. Like, well, I have said this is the third time I mentioned Justin Bieber, but I don't know, like Bruno Mars or Ed Sheeran, and then they can look for the video, and if the video is available, the whole game is the song. While the song is playing, you have the lyrics, but they take out words from the lyrics. So the exercise for them is to try to understand the lyrics and type the missing words. So this is an excellent exercise. I can just, I think, if I remember the name, is something like
Oh, yeah.
lyrics.
Maybe you can send the link or
I'm typing it in the chat. I think it's just like that.
yes,
I think. Um, and again, that's a very
lyrics.
old platform. I think it's like I knew about it like 5 years ago or something. Um, but it's very useful, especially if the student remember not multiple intelligences or learning style, but if the student has preferences for music, this is a good way to try to get him engaged or interested in the listening part. So that's kind of using sentence frames or sentence starters. Like you have the lyrics, but you just let them complete it. That's, I think it's a very old exercise, but since you're using technology, it's more appealing for new generations and people in general because it is
Oh,
then,
and you know something, music can do miracles.
yeah.
Yeah, music can do miracles if you really like it, enjoy it. Yeah, that could stimulate a student's mind a lot.
Yeah. I don't
Mhm.
know if it has happened to Miguel, but it has happened to me that even nowadays, because most of my time I used to like rock and metal, you can imagine I didn't understand most
Me
of the
too, me
lyrics.
too.
So even nowadays, I go back to a song I haven't heard in a while, and they say, "Oh my God, this is I didn't imagine this was the message." Uh, and I always tell students about this Limp Bizkit song, Nuki. I didn't imagine it was like a heartbreak song and he was suffering. So you see, metalheads also have feelings. Now that has become a
Yes.
joke for me as well. Uh,
And do you remember Back in Black? I heard you say.
ex-
I couldn't understand, you
no, not a
know,
word. It was
the
just the chorus and the catchy guitar riff or something.
yes. And I had a teacher, he was from England in Barquisimeto in an academy. And I asked him, "Oh, I want to know," because by that time we didn't have internet, you know.
Mhm.
And then he said, "Never mind. Neither do I. I don't understand." He said,
Okay. It's just the
didn't
vibe.
like rock. Yes, he didn't like rock. That's the truth.
Well. So finally, talking about scaffolding here, we have allowing them to listen to it more than once with different focuses. Again, this as long as they are listening, that's exposure, and this is something we will see again when we get to other types of listening. Because where's the problem with listening to it more than once? Um, you are not testing them like in a summative with a summative approach. You are supposed to be checking and giving them the support. Like, I didn't get it. Okay, let's listen one more time. What's the problem? That's not a problem, or that shouldn't be a problem. And we can see the difference again when you are teaching and you are just going through the motions, like showing them the slides, and they don't get it. And what's the point of listening if you play it once and you move on? That's not helping them. And that's helping probably those who already have some proficiency, but those who are struggling probably are just they're sitting feeling uncomfortable because they didn't get it. So we move on to another one. We have three. This is the previous one was extensive. This is intensive listening. Refers to listening to short. This is more similar to what we have in lessons, right? Short, focused impact input to extract specific information or to analyze specific language features, like typically book one. What is he using? Or correct the sentences. Is he using is or are, and so on. Examples, instructions, announcement. Well, announcements are typical, like in tests and advanced lessons when two college students are talking about the new class they're taking. Short dialogues, grammar focused listening. As I said, these are just a few examples. Then usually the purpose is to train attention to detail. So while extensive refers to a longer exposure, intensive is shorter, but again, more intense. You are using more you're focusing your energy on getting details. Support pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary acquisition, of course, especially if connected to speaking tasks, we know. Um, and this is to get ready our learners for exams or real life tasks. Um, so teacher moves for this one include using targeted questions, which is, again, in lessons, this is what you usually get, right? Why did he say about this? Or in tests or in exams, he's talking about this, true or false, and so on, right? You don't need to get but the important part of information, the important or specific targeted things. Teacher moves again, replace segments with a purpose. This is not like, okay, teacher, I didn't get it. Okay, I'll play it again. Well, that may work for some learners, but the idea is to be inclusive, right? To make them all have the same opportunities. So maybe you can replay it again, but you can ask again previous questions, which is one of the typical scaffolding things. You can ask, what didn't you get, or what part, or what words did you get, or let's pay attention to this. And one typical teacher move would be, I think this is in the scaffolding part, well, you see, pre-teach key vocabulary, not all of it, but specific words that are essential to understand or to answer the questions we want them to answer, or specific structures. Another good way to scaffold this is using graphic organizers on timelines to track information if we are talking about specific dates, for instance, or events. And this is the one I wanted to show you. You can just break the audio to short segments, but with targeted questions. Um, you can do it once, twice, maybe three times, but with different purposes, because the whole point is to address what they are not understanding, right? You can play it three times, but if you're just playing it there and expecting them to understand, again, it can work for some of them, but not all of them. But if you make pauses, if you ask them for keywords, and then they can even solve the puzzle and say, "Oh, this is about this," and then they have like their aha moment. Um, then also going back to teacher moves paired with note taking or gap fill activities, we are seeing again the integrated skills approach comes up naturally. Uh, if they are note taking, this is already becoming into a writing activity. And if then they share their notes to see who was right and who was wrong, this becomes a conversation. Um, and talking about scaffolding, the last recommendation, this is basically what we just noticed, we just saw. And what I'm saying here is basically the last part, sequencing tasks. So to make it more meaningful, even to check their own answers, they can have a conversation, and maybe the listening can be repeated, but after they have a conversation, and so on. So all of this works. All of this is welcome. But I think the key move here of the teacher is paying attention to the students to see if they are actually understanding, because in many cases they can just stay quiet, especially if we have the typical student who immediately raises the hand and, oh, I know, this is it. So like, okay. We can, even to avoid that, we can implement the think per share. Okay, when after we listen, take a moment, don't answer immediately, to give everybody a chance to think and say, okay, I think this is it. And then we kind of block this intimidating guy having all the answers immediately.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so pay attention to your learners and don't be afraid of making pauses, as long as the pauses or the repetitions have a purpose, not just seeing if they work, if they understand because you're repeating the listening. Then we have the third one, which is probably the best one. But you see, this is not about seeing one with different eyes than the other. We are talking about interactive listening, which means listening that what happens in a real time conversation. This is, in other words, a communicative exchange. Therefore, it requires processing, responding, and negotiating meaning. And this is something I have paid attention more recently too. And when the students say, but what if I don't understand my partner? You don't have to understand everything. When you're having a conversation with another person, it can happen that you don't understand and you both speak Spanish. What happens when you don't understand? When you ask questions and you try to make meaning, to negotiate the meaning. Like, what do you mean with this? No, what I meant was this. Okay, you see, that's communication. You don't have to get everything immediately. If you don't get it immediately, you can actually engage in communication, basically. Some examples of interactive listening: the typical activities recommended, right, in a communicative language teaching approach. Role plays, that's a classic. Interviews, especially when the interview is not the typical interview for summative assessment purposes, when you are sitting there with a teacher or with two teachers. Now we're talking about interviews. Even the role play with interview combination is very good when they are not playing themselves but representing, or role playing when they are acting as another person, a famous person, for instance, or debates. Another way they can use their active listening and their interactive listening, because if you want to present a decent rebuttal, you need to pay attention to your partner's argument, right? Especially if they are competitive, this is great. Group discussions as well, and peer feedback. Do group discussions work magically? No, nothing, none of this work magically. Of course, this is closely, or the way they work is closely connected to the things we have discussed in the past. Self-efficacy, engagement, motivation, building a learning community. When they feel comfortable, of course, they will have more chances of them speaking, as we will talk in more detail in the following part of this. But as of now, you can see how, since we're talking about interaction, this is no longer isolated listening. Interaction means you're using your speaking. What the other person is using your speaking. The purpose, very simple, in 3 words. The purpose of interactive listening is to develop communicative competence, to develop your students' ability to use the language effectively, uh, to train them to listen and respond appropriately. And this is connected to the next one, I think, because this is something essential to build social pragmatic awareness. This is part of communicative competence. Remember, communicative competence has a linguistic element. Grammar is an inherent part of the language, is the structure of the language. So yeah, you need grammar, but you also need to develop your strategic competence, how to use that grammar uh, in certain situations. And you also need pragmatic, social and pragmatic awareness. You can know the grammar, you can be kind of smart when it comes to using the language, but what about understanding how your tone can change, how your tone can help you achieve your communicative goals. Because I remember this is connected to actos del habla when you don't even need to say the exact words, but if you use a certain expression with a different tone, that can be very effective. How about turn taking? How do you recognize the other person's speech is finished and you can reply? And how to be polite, and especially because these three things, or let's say pragmatics, are very different in different contexts. Politeness is perceived differently in Japan, for instance. And so if we are using the common language we have, uh, we need to still be aware of cultural differences in that case. Not that you know all the cultures in the world, you know how every country shows politeness, no, but the understanding of things being different pushes you to be more what they call is culturally sensitive, to avoid misunderstandings, to avoid confusion. And that's basically the next step of communicative competence. That's what we call intercultural competence, which would be the we are focusing on communicative competence, but the next step, or the more recent addition to this framework, is when we talk about intercultural competence. You know the language, you know how to use it, you know about pragmatics, but then how do you take that to a international, interconnected context where probably you will be using the language with people from very different cultures. So that's awareness, cultural awareness as well. Teacher moves for interactive listening basically are the same teacher moves you can recommend to interactions in the classroom in general, with a purpose, of course. Teacher moves, use jigsaw tasks. We have already mentioned jigsaw task or information gaps to create real need for listening, because in the end we are here talking about listening right now. Uh, what I told you, for example, with completing the lyrics of a song, which is a very simple exercise. What if you're interviewing somebody and you need to complete, to fill in a form? So the role play becomes maybe you are working at the doctor's office and you're taking the information from this patient, for example. Then scaffold with sentence starters or functional phrases. You see phrases more than words, more than translation. How can I ask about this person's age? Well, how old are you, for example? That's like an ideal student, I know. Then you can reflect after the interaction happens or the exercise is over. Uh, and this is building on the student's metalinguistic awareness to understand his strengths and maybe where he needs more work to, you know, overcome any challenges. How to scaffold model functional language. This is something typical we do at Sevan. Keep in mind, I always refer to adult courses because this is my part of the story, but this can work in a very similar way with children. When we give and on day one, we give these kind of expressions to beginners. Expressions they can use because when they see the rules, as Alba said, there are many things there that are easy to understand. But when they say communication is in English, it's like, how in the hell can I communicate in English if I don't speak English? You say, okay, wait a minute, you'll see. And then they receive some functional language they can use and they say, okay, I can. So when you model that, because remember, modeling is a big part of teaching, and you see, okay, what is that door? You see, that's it. You don't need anything else. You are not using your Spanish. Um, the importance of interactions. Um, Use sentence starters, as we said before, response frames, and active listening strategies like paraphrasing, clarifying questions. Clarifying questions, super important, right? Like if you didn't understand, ask questions. There's not a problem. That's not a sign of, stupidity or anything. This is you showing interest in your learning, yes, but also in the specific interaction. You're showing interest in what the other person is saying. And I think there's one more. No, there's one more. We're moving to stages of a listening exercise. You see, I'm kind of running. I told you there's information today. There was a lot of information. Uh, the stages are what you imagine. This is very simple. So we're talking here more about intentionality, basically, because we have probably known for a while that we have pre, while, and post listening. Yes, of course, that's obvious. But the important part is here the intentionality aspect of this. Okay, so what is the purpose of having something done before listening? Well, activating background knowledge, linguistic, cultural, everything that might be necessary in the to understand the listening or to practice the listening in a productive way, to set expectations and reduce cognitive load. Remember, we are against the sink or swim approach. That's all. That doesn't work. We need to support them. We need to give them a scaffolding if we really expect them to improve or to progress. So there is no point in just, okay, listen to that. What did you understand? Yes, no. Okay, I don't care. Move on. No, the idea is for them to understand the listening. Some recommended strategies to predict content from visuals or titles. Typically, materials have all of these available. They have like a big title, or listen to this person talking about whatever, and then they listen to these two students talking about their new class, and the picture, usually there's a picture with them holding a book or something. Um, in off to class, for example, talking about the adult courses, slides usually have a lot of visuals, especially for the beginner levels like level one and level two, and usually everything that is being discussed in the slide is in the listening is in the slide. So that's like no hay pele, diríamos en español. Discuss related personal experiences. Again, this is activating background knowledge. Pre-teach key vocabulary or grammar, or just check if they know. Hey guys, do you remember what a door is? I said, I don't. Well, remember the door is this thing we have to get into the classroom. Set a clear listening goal. Again, are you listening for the idea or for specific information like we're reading, right? Are you skimming? Are you scanning? Are you getting the main idea, or are you trying to get specific parts of the speech? If you're checking understanding, again, are you allowing them to use Spanish, for instance? But also, if you're allowing Spanish, is this very frequent? So are students always using Spanish? And that goes against our goals as a global goal, the global goal we have at Sevan. While listening, again, paying attention here to intentionality, guide attention, support comprehension, and build listening stamina. Especially nowadays that, we have talked a lot about attention spans in today's learners. Uh, for some of them, a 3-minute listening might be extremely long. You see why? Because even pop songs nowadays are between 2.5 minutes, 3.5 minutes, maybe four, and that's it. Like songs are also very short nowadays. They directly have the hook and the chorus, and it's very basic. So they like the song. Um, they don't really have reasons to like the listening in many cases. So again, building listening stamina. This is training them to listen basically for longer periods. Use tiered tasks. For example, listen for this and then just listen for a second time to get details. Even if this is not in the instructions, you can do it because you wanted to, especially if you think that's necessary and useful for your group. In the end, at the end, oh yes, in the end, remember, we are in charge of the process in the classroom. They are our students, and we are the ones who know them, and we can make these kind of decisions. Uh, Provide graphic organizers or note-taking templates. As we said before, pause and replay strategically, not just replaying the listening. That's it, but doing it again with a purpose, making pauses more than if this is a 3-minute listening. I think there's in book one, in off to class, this is at the beginning. I think this is like unit two or unit three. That means they are basically beginners at that moment. And there is like a 1.5 minute listening. You say, oh my goodness. And it is to guess the name of the person speaking. And You say, oh my God. So you can play it the first time and probably nobody will get it. Because in the end, they are also guessing. So it's long, there's a lot of vocabulary, and on top of everything, they are also trying to guess the person. So the person doesn't say, okay, my name is blah, and this is my family. No, this is my mom has short hair, she's a nurse, blah, 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 blah. So in that case, you can play it the first time, like to have a first exposure to being exposed for the first time to the information, but a good recommendation, of course, depending on how your students are getting the information, is to make pauses where you think they are needed, especially because you are also guessing who are the members of the family to complete the family tree. So maybe after each description, you can make a pause and ask, okay, who's this person? That's just an example of how this can work. And guiding questions, that's basically what I just did. And finally, post listening. We have listening with the purpose of extending understanding, connect to other skills. As we said, the sequencing, okay, how do you transform this into a speaking activity, for instance, or how do you make it a writing exercise? Discuss, summarize or retell the content, discuss opinions or reactions, role play or write based on input or reflect on what helped you understand better. In this kind of metacognitive reflection, even the student can say, you know what, teacher, after listening for the third time, I got it. You see, okay, you see, when you are practicing at home, probably replaying the audio is a good idea. Uh, all right, let's move on because it's already 9. Uh, and then I wanted to ask you this question to give you some time to breathe, but also to reflect. After all of this information related to the 3 types of listening, remember extensive, intensive, and interaction, and the 3 stages with all of this purpose, with all of these strategies and scaffolding, how do you feel now about the way you have been using your listening activities? Do you think have you skipped them? Have you just rushed through? Even with the passages books, for instance, many teachers, if not all teachers, skip listenings because well, students have a higher, more advanced proficiency. I try to look for those listenings who may have information that is interesting for them and something that you can get something good out of them, basically. But again, those are teaching decisions. So, guys, what do you think about all of this we have discussed? Comparing it with your own experience playing listenings in the classroom or assigning listenings to the students as homework.
Well, I kind of have something to say. Well, I've been in classes, observations, and classes as a student, and through the books, there are audios. Do you know audio tracks?
Mm-hmm.
When you were explaining the stages of listening, it really reminded me of what teachers um, used to do with us as students when they play the audio tracks. Exactly these stages you're talking about. So I find it very related to the audio tracks during the books.
Good for the teachers. Thank you, Yerina. Anyone else?
Well,
Or
I haven't,
huh?
yeah, I haven't taught there yet. Okay, I haven't taught at Sevan yet, but this is helpful. This is very nice because, yeah, it gives us ideas, new ideas for me. I've always used songs and music because I think when people really likes a song or something like that, they really engage in the activity. They really do, and you always learn at least the words,
Yeah.
when you're exposed to a song. So I really like this. And about the audios in class, of course, I think they should listen to them. But as you said, Amber, you've got the experience that you have to choose the ones that are going to be helpful, to reinforce the lessons. Um, but of course, they need to listen to be native speakers, the ones we have at the audios, because of course you also learn a language by imitating it. So of course you have to listen to it. And not just listen, you have to listen to yourself, because that's the way your brain can say, oh, I can talk another language.
Mhm.
It's so important, not just listening, but listening to a song, but listening to yourself. That's why it's so important to talk to other people and yeah, engage in all these types of activities.
Thank you, Alba. I agree with you. And you just made me remember something that is uh, like to keep in mind with this. I told you with the levels where we use in which we use passages, books, because what if we skip all the listening? So when the student gets to the quiz, they don't really have that training with that kind of listening. But that's an interesting part because we're talking about getting our students ready for tests because that's part of the process. They have to take their exams. Um, and this is something special to handle with care. And this is on the review actually at Sevant with the first levels because then again, probably a student from this level 6, 7, 8, 9 hasn't heard the listening but can get the gist or the details if we play it twice in the quiz. But in the initial levels, they probably need more preparation for the exams. And this is a conversation we had with the more experienced teachers. I just hope they are taking that information into account because we told them, yes, maybe the listening they are longer, but they are based on the listenings they have in the lesson. So we don't have they should have context if we're playing the listenings in each lesson. So this is about aligning our decisions with the general goals of the course at the end. All right, we are moving on because I'm going to give you a couple of core strategies. Remember what I always say, these are some, but if you go online, probably you get more. But for the sake of time, I always show at least maybe 1 or 2 slides in some cases. Authentic materials, as Alba just mentioned, real voices, real people, real native speakers, real speakers of the language, even if it sounds imperfect. Well, come on, my English is not perfect. It's far from perfect, but this is input for them, for example. So it's kind of ironic if I, as a teacher who speaks their language as a foreign speaker, say, this listening is not good because it is not perfect like in this way. Say, come on. So you shouldn't be teaching. I mean, the important part is you are where you are expected to be in terms of proficiency and challenge. Remember, cognitive demand. Uh, Let me log in here. Okay. Next, another key strategy. Oh, well, there you have it. For example, podcast interviews, announcement. This is like the third time I mentioned YouTube, but YouTube is like the biggest library we have in the world and the biggest resource we have. You have videos of all kinds. You can have the worst videos in history, but you can also have things that are specifically like designed for your needs. And oh, by the way, there are the resources of American English. I never considered mentioning this, but I know that it comes to my mind. Those videos are usually very good. American English is also sponsored by the US government. They have a YouTube channel, and usually their videos on basic stuff are really good. But also they have videos like webinars and so on. I don't know if later we can talk about this. Probably Miguel can tell you. They have like webinars and recommendations like good practices for teachers or recommended practices and so on. And again, for free because these are sponsored by the US government, the same way these open courses are sponsored by the US government. Design purposeful tasks always give learners a reason to listen. Again, if you don't have a purpose in life where you are walking, like wandering, and you don't do anything. So like find specific information, solve a problem, prepare to speak are some possible purposes you can give them for the listening. Scaffold comprehension again. support them, what we just saw in the previous slide, before, during, and after the listening, using visuals, prediction, vocabulary support, sentence frames, pausing the listening, replaying the listening. And this is very important. Chunk and repeat what I was just mentioning. You can just break it, the audio into manageable parts and replay with intention. Uh, First, listen for the general thing, then you can listen for specific detail, then you can listen to see how the language focus is appearing there, and even a fourth time to check if you want to check more vocabulary, if that's not overwhelming. It always depends on, remember, context sensitive pedagogy. It depends on your students and your students' needs, and even your time, availability. Time management is always an important thing to keep in mind. And integrate listening with other skills to make it more meaningful. As we said, note taking and the sequencing. Remember, you listen, then you discuss, then you write, and maybe you listen again, or you listen, you write a summary, you present your summary, you compare your summary to your partner's summary, and then you analyze what you think was more important, and so on. That's it. Typical strategies, but in this case, some of them are very specific to listening activities. I'm going to ask you here. I think we can. Let me see what time it is. I think we can do it very quickly. Okay. I will ask you not to think of 6 or 8 tasks you have recently used, but I think we can skip it because Pierina, for example, already mentioned that she has seen this work in the classroom. Okay, so let's just skip this one um, and move on to an essential topic we have nowadays, incorporating technology into listening activities. We do it all the time at CEPAM. Like after all, computers, electronic devices are technology. The platform we are using is powered by technology. Uh, Technology, right? Let's see. What tech tools have you used to support listening? I just gave you at least this. Uh, Playing the listening in the classroom, that's using technology. Um, but I'm going to ask you if you have that kind of experience using technology to support activities, what works for children. In the case of children, there are many things we could say and to consider what worked, what didn't work, and what surprised you when using technology for listenings in the classroom. Maybe
I
observing
want,
classes or something. Yes.
well, I have an example. I really like teaching, and I think it's a very good way to learn English watching cartoons. You're
Mhm.
using technology because of the dub in the cartoons has to be very clear from the dubbing acting dub acting. I think it's called like that.
Yes, it does.
It's very understandable. So yeah, I find it very useful. But on the other hand, we have I remember in like primary school there was an English teacher that used to bring to class a radio, and she puts the CD on the radio, and we had to listen to the tape, or well, the audio. But oh my god, in radio it sounds horrible. It's terrible. Like, you couldn't understand anything. So it's a technology tool that I think it's like, yeah, it's a little bit old fashioned, and there are better techniques and tools so you can hear the audio better.
Thank you, Karina. Alba, anything to add or
No, it's okay. Well, I think I told you an example, okay, um, with children, but of course, it was a simple class about children that are just starting at Sevan. And I could observe in a class, and yeah, the repetition of school objects, uh, playing the audios, playing the songs, okay, simple songs with nice rhythms, um, playing and the song and saying this school objects or whatever they were learning, okay? And yeah, it does work, you know? And I think for kids it's so important to listen to music, and if they have the chance to move. And yeah, we had the chance to move our bodies a little bit, and that keeps them going on, in the class. And one other thing that is so important, okay, that's technology, but to reinforce that, try to talk to them in English too.
Mhm.
I remember one of the kids, he needed help to sharpen his pencil. And I said, "Oh, you need help? Come, give me your sharpener." And okay, here you are. I can sharpen your pencil. And he was just listening. They're like little sponges, and then Hugo came into the class because we had a problem with one of the kids. Not a problem, an issue, okay? That it
Mhm.
looks like he couldn't hear sounds so loud because that stresses him out. And he came into the room, Hugo, and he started asking questions to them,
Mhm.
we listened to the song. Then he could see this little boy that was, you know, uh, that for him was so hard to listen to loud
Mhm.
voices or loud sounds. He been dancing and all this. Then
Mhm.
he started to ask, and how do you say this word in English? And how do you say this word in English? And the one that nobody said anything was sharpener, But at the end, there were twins, and one of the twins said, at the end, just before Hugo said, "Oh, it's okay," he said, "Sharpener," and it was like, wow, wow. He memorized it. He listened
Yeah,
to it. He grew it.
it's stuck.
And then he was reinforced as I talked to him. So it's very nice to do all these things integrated, like you said. Okay, I use technology, but I also have to try to talk to them in English. And I don't believe, of course, if Sevan's policies says that I should not think like this or I should not share this opinion that I'm going to share now, okay. But I want to say something. I do think that people have to be exposed to the language. I do think they do. They really have to be exposed. Not like, oh, poor little thing, I cannot teach him. This is, or these are because he can. No, children have a great. How can you say that? Um, o sea, they have lots of they're capable, okay? They are
Mhm.
able to listen to a lot of things and retain them. I think that more than adults. I've seen kids that you're talking and you think they're not listening to you, and then they're just saying the sounds even though they don't understand. They start like saying the sounds. What does this mean? And they say the sounds, and I get amazed, really. And adults should behave more like kids, like
Yeah, I agree.
be open to receive. And well, that's my opinion. But people should get exposed to language. In my case, I'm always exposed to language, and I listen all the time, and I learn new words all the time. I have learned a lot from you because you use a very formal language, and that's amazing. Me quito el sombrero, como se dice en
No,
español.
chapeau en francés.
Sí, yes, yes, because I haven't studied English at university, okay, abroad. I haven't done that, and you have. So, of course, you have a level, you have another level.
No, no.
Well, yeah, of course. Don't say no. It's so hard to talk for 2 hours and in that formal language like you do. Yeah, of course.
Ya me voy a poner rojo.
Bueno,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, Let me continue then, because Alba and
okay.
Pierina are mentioning two important things. First, Alba, don't worry. What you're saying
Mhm.
exactly aligns with Sebam's policy, philosophy, and there's a reason why. Well, this sounds like cocky or whatever, but I tell this to students. There's a reason why Sebam doesn't really need advertisement or advertising the institution, on the radio or whatever you want. we do have some advertising. Of course, this is a business, but the best we have is, mouth to mouth. We have people talking about us, and they say we take, and I think that's the big difference. Like we take language teaching very seriously at Sevam. And this is, I must say, I've been at Sevan for, I said, like 8 years now, 7 or 8 years. But as soon as I got there, I noticed these people took it seriously. um,
Yes.
I mean, from Michelle down, Michelle takes Sevan really seriously. Miguel, in that moment, we had Jose and the teaching staff. And so it's even better that you are thinking like this. And now talking about Perina's comment, this is interesting because if I combine your two ideas, it's interesting that children are like sponges, and when they are engaged, right? Like they are really engaged. But it also happens the other way around, and this is where you question the effectivity or how effective your listening activity is, because when they disconnect, they just disconnect. They don't want anything to do with that. And that sometimes, wanting it or not, it sometimes happens, and we need to be ready. And this is the problem, or one of the big challenges of teaching children, that you need to, have a backup plan. If this is not working, you need to be paying attention all the time to see this is not working. I need to change direction. Um, so if you have this situation, that's a good idea. Fiorina is saying that cartoons. I mean, there's a reason why cartoons is usually the preferred format when you are looking for videos for your students, right? Because they like the movement, the sound, if they can connect or trying to, as Alba said before, like to replicate what they are seeing. If they like the character, they want to imitate the character, and so on. So yeah, this takes us to the reasons why using technology is a good idea for your listenings. First, it expands access to authentic input. I already gave you the example recommendation of American English, but there are thousands, if not millions, of sites producing that kind of content with cartoons, very nice animations, with nice dubbing, good voices, because that's also important to have a voice that feels warm, welcoming. There's also a reason why, in many cases, the voiceover is a woman with a very warm and welcoming tone. It supports differentiation because, remember, not all of them have the same proficiency. So if you are planning on using something besides the listenings from the book or the lessons, you can choose, or you can split the group. And Sevam has resources. Remember, Sevam has ways to support you if you are planning a special activity. For example, we can, well, I'm speaking here instead of Miguel, but Sevam has some laptop computers. We have some tablets. We have a few of them, like several tablets, and we have spaces if you want to try something. So if we are thinking of differentiation, there's always something we can talk about it at Sevam. And then, of course, technology enables repetition, visual support, and then by sequencing activities, you have more interaction. So this is the good side, the reasons to use technology, but there are also reasons not to use technology. Um, and I don't want to be the party pooper. In the past, yes, I used to like being the party pooper, but now no. This is just a reminder of use, like everything with technology. Use technology with care. Okay, be careful. Uh, that's not a magic solution. The same happens with AI, for example. Access and equity. I remember I come from a background from high school. I taught in a high school in Venezuela, and during the worst part of the crisis, 2016, 17, 18. And this was something to keep in mind. Access and equity. Not all learners have devices. If you are assigning homework, some of them don't have, they have the device but don't have data, or they don't even have a stable connection to the internet. This is something to keep in mind. Uh, Cognitive overload. The technology thing can be a distraction from the actual goal. And talking about our experience at Sevan, for these outreach activities, I told you before, we had these VR devices. And we had lesson plans for the VR devices because this was not just, okay, give them the Oculus and I don't know, use it. No, this was with a purpose. But of course, in some cases, when our facilitation was not the best or the most appropriate for the case on, or when there were just too many children or when they were too active, the importance of the agenda, right? Because maybe the previous activity have them like hyped. This is like having a super boring class after uh, the break in a high school or in a school or after PE, and then it's very difficult to get them concentrated. This can happen and they just miss the point of the listening activity. The pedagogical fit, some tasks work better unplugged, like storytelling in an interactive listening way is probably better than listening to a story because they are speaking, they can ask questions, and they can become a part of the situation. They can be more engaged because they are talking about their own stories, lives, anecdotes, whatever you want, including similarly interviews or other kinds of interaction, time and training, because wanting it or not, some teachers don't have enough, let's say, skills regarding the use of digital devices. So that takes time. And it happens that there is a problem with the computer, for example, or with the well, yeah, with the computer or the platform we're using. And if we are not ready to solve the problem and all our activity was focused on listening to this story or something like this, that's an issue because you're basically relying on technology. And when something goes wrong and you don't have an alternative, that's a major problem. Also, we're talking about authenticity. Some over edited digital materials can feel less real than teacher center or teacher plan input. So, as I said, talking about reasons not to use technology, this is not that you shouldn't use technology. This is about using technology in a smart way, okay? And something extra, this is closely connected to children. Talking about classroom management, devices can fragment attention or create logistic challenges. It also happens with adults, of course. And even if the class is already boring, I don't know, because you are working on a topic that might not be particularly engaging, but you need to complete it. For instance, you can change direction, but what if this is necessary because of the program or because of this is part of something bigger? Well, having it as part of the program it means it is part of something bigger and important. But I think you get my idea. When it is like the situation cannot be changed, you can have people even in adult courses just disconnected uh, from the class so- because the listening then it becomes uh, useless, even boring. So if we're talking about here the good and the bad of listening and so on. And now I just gave you the downside of using technology in your listening exercises. Where do we stand then? Well, use use technology when it serves the learner and not the lesson plan. Um, Keep in mind, we are planning backward. We're using backward design. For instance, you say, okay, my student wants, or I want my student to be able to do this at the end of the project or the class or the lesson, whatever you want. So when you're incorporating technology there, it should be something that helps the student reach that point and not incorporating it because you feel like it would be fun or something. Think about the needs and about the purpose, okay? Because as it says there, tech should support listening, not replace real interaction, not replace intuition or intention. That would be our conclusion there. Uh, so, either ways, I'm showing you here some tools you might want to try. You have purpose, because as I said just now, important part is the purpose, how this serves your learner's needs and progress. We have for authentic input, YouTube. This is like the fourth time I mentioned YouTube, or podcast in general on YouTube, or I don't know, there are many podcasts or many platforms that where you can find podcasts. What would be the low tech alternative if you don't have access to the internet or you don't have a computer or you don't have the horrible radio, Pierina's teacher used to use. No, I mean that's good because the teacher was trying to use to give you, I'm guessing, like native speaker kind of input, but it's kind of productive, certainly. If the radio is not working well, that's probably doing more harm than good, right? Because that becomes confusing, and some students can even just make a joke out of it. So local radio, if you have access to a radio where they use their target language, or you can use your own recordings if you feel like it. If you trust your language that much, and you don't feel uncomfortable listening to yourself. I feel really uncomfortable listening to myself in English. Scaffolding ideas for this one: pre-listening, questions, visuals, transcripts, if you want to support them here. Learner production, you can use, you see, we're going from the listening passively or just paying attention to somebody to even record yourself, and then remember they can listen to themselves, and this can be a cycle in which they can work a lot, for example, on their pronunciation or fluency. You can use Flipgrid, voice recorders. A low-tech alternative is WhatsApp voice, sentence frames for the scaffolding, rehearsal times. We have seen most of these scaffolding options, but now we have them here for specific purposes. For more interactive tasks, in case you want to avoid extensive and intensive listening and focus on interaction, you have a puzzle, play posit. Again, these are just some options. The low tech alternative, making your own pause, asking questions, and there you have a scaffolding, pronunciation and fluency, Elsa Speak, Youglish, a low tech alternative, repetition drills, or the teacher just modeling the pronunciation. And there you have for scaffolding options, shadowing, stressing the tone, practices the tone and the stress, chunking the vocabulary, even when you're, I don't know, if you're working, for example, on linking in their pronunciation, this is something the teacher can do without any major issues. Listening for note taking, TED Talks, ListenWise. You can find their teacher lectures and peer presentations as low tech alternatives. Of course, the thing with peer presentations is this is something you decide based on your purpose, because if you are trying to give them exposure to native speakers, well, the peer presentation is not really an alternative. And then you have some other classic scaffolding options like graphic organizers, templates, pause and jot down ideas. Then for reflection and feedback purposes, you can use Padlet. This is something is has been used a lot at Sebam. I think Miguel and Andres, for example, use it a lot or have used it several times. You can use paper charts or verbal sharing, even having a conversation with your student. That's not a problem if you have a good communication. Or if you have good rapport, would be the word. Then we have sentence starters, peer review, prompts for this purpose. I think we're reaching the end. Yes, we're almost finishing here. Uh, so I'm going to show you now some AI tools that support listening practice. All right. I haven't used most of them. I just looked for information, looked for the reviews and the possible purpose. But since this is active learning, you can just, as I have said regarding the strategies, you can just go online or you can try them and let us know how it went. Other AI, this is an AI-powered transcription and summarization tool. Um, Speech to text, you see. Students record lectures or conversation and then listen back. This is the listening part of this. Um, it is good if you're practicing note taking um, and strategy awareness. Remember, when you're not taking and you're summarizing, especially when you're not taking, you need to become, this is a skill actually, to make it short. Uh, it has some functions available for free. And as I said, I checked some reviews and it's highly reviewed. Apparently, it's very good. I haven't used it. ChatGPT, of course, and we all know ChatGPT. This would be basically using ChatGPT with specific purposes in the voice mode. This, of course, ChatGPT is a generative AI model. Students can ask questions to ChatGPT, listen to explanations, practice comprehension. You can even, if you have the paid version, well, we know there's a difference between the free version and the paid version. Um, but the thing is that the good part is that this is on demand. So it basically, the person can tailor the way ChatGPT works as a support in this case to fit the specific needs. And of course, we have the free version, but if you have the paid version, because of other reasons, it can be an excellent tool. Of course, we are not going to deny that. Or some other similar models. I mean, Gemini is also very good. Um, and like, there's also Copilot. It's a thing. The important thing would be there to try them out. Elsa Speak, because it also has pronunciation analysis. This is machine learning pronunciation scoring. The student listen to native like models and receive feedback on their own speaking. Elsa is another very famous platform. It supports micro listening and suprasegmental awareness. Oh my goodness, that sounds so formal. You have a free trial. Unfortunately, you can imagine this kind of super awesome platform would be uh, most of these super awesome platforms are paid, but it is, as I said, it has excellent reviews. Duolingo. I don't know if you guys use Duolingo. I use Duolingo. I only get the max version. However, well, I never get, you get the plus version, I think, but then the max version, the paid version, is very different. It has because it uses generative AI for explanation and even conversations. Students, and Duolingo students listen, respond, and get feedback, even in this case. This is controlled interactive listening, but also Duolingo in itself is a listening exercise. But of course, if you're using the basic version or if in general you're using, keep in mind that Duolingo's model is actually kind of traditional. This is you listen and you choose the answers. But if you are interested in a little bit of practice, and this is actually a game, so don't expect Duolingo to help you learn like a lot, but to practice some vocabulary and expression, it's not bad. Instead of playing Candy Crush, you can play Duolingo. And of course, the max version, the better version, the best version is paid, but it is supposed to be a very high quality experience. And to finally show you the last part of AI tools that support listening, we have whisper-based tools such as like AudioPan. This is another AI to take your speech to text. This helps students record themselves and compare what they say to what the AI heard. Why it matters, excellent for reflection. You see, to develop metacognitive awareness, metalinguistic awareness, and noticing. Some It depends on the one. I'm giving you the name of those apps or that kind of app, so you can maybe look for one and try that one out or a couple of them, and then you can let us know. Puzzle also has a function. Um, you see, Purina is already suggesting one called Stimulator. Puzzle, this is AI enhanced, so this is not generative AI. Um, eh, Generated questions, analytics, interactive listening tasks with embedded questions, and of course it supports active listening. And there is a very good free version I have heard. This one I heard about in the US when I was in the US. Um, it is supposed to be very good. I remember or I remember a classmate who I think used it in an activity. If that's the one I'm remembering, is actually very good. But again, it's a matter of trying them out. And as a teacher, that's part of the business, right? Looking for tools and seeing if they work or not. Okay, we're going to make a pause here and reflect. So you can take a deep breath. I can take a deep breath. Before we move forward, let's take a moment to breathe and check in. I'm gonna ask you if there are any questions, if there is anything you would like to discuss further tomorrow, or can you think of one word to describe how you're feeling right now after all of this? I'm sorry. So again, breathe, think of how you feel, think of what we have covered today, and you can share a word in the chat if you want to say how you're feeling about today's content, about today's conversation, or even your feelings. But you can write down there that you feel exhausted, and I would completely understand. Take a moment there, please, and reflect. Breathe. All right, thank you, Pierina. We are moving forward then because you have homework for tomorrow. This is not like super serious, okay? Don't worry. This is just now that Pierina mentioned that we have discussed a lot of learning strategies. Um, I will ask you to think back on everything we explored. You can just, well, if you want, you can go and rewatch the the video when it is available today in the afternoon and just jot down two listening activities uh, that you believe could work in your context or in a context you know well, maybe thinking about the future. Like once I get to teach this thing, I would like to do something like this. Uh, but when you jot down these two activities, think about the purpose of the activity. Is it extensive, intensive, or interactive? How you would help your learners, and how you might adapt it to specific things like level, group size, low tech version if there's no power in the classroom. And you can optionally add one way technology or even AI could support uh, your activity there. This is just jotting down two ideas of listening activities you would like to use sometime in the future, even for example, watching a video and doing something with that video to practice a specific, beyond listening, of course, to address a language target or something. Yes, and again, this is not super serious. No, no, no. Just think of two activities, Pierina. Don't worry. This, as I said, this is not super serious. Just think of two activities you would like to use sometime in the future. Uh, Materials with what group, what topic, or even a bigger task. But that's again optional. The important part is for you to analyze basically how these activities would work in the real world. So yes, it is as easy as it looks. Don't worry. So for now, I'm going to show you really quickly the key takeaways I want you to have from today. Um, Listening is teachable, and learners deserve intentional. They deserve and they need intentional and scaffolded support. Different types of listening tasks serve different goals. As we said, stages matter. The fact that we saw them separately is to understand that each one serves a purpose, and each one of them give us different opportunities uh, to strengthen the process. Of course, scaffolding transforms tasks from passive reception to active engagement. So we see how scaffolding actually serves a double purpose. It is to help them, but also to make the activity more useful. Technology is a tool, not a goal. Super important to keep in mind that should be used when it adds value, okay, not just novelty. AI can support listening, but pedagogy must lead the way. So our purpose here is to mediate and make technology, in this particular case, actually useful for them. And redesigning task is possible even with limited resources. This is something important considering that most contexts in Venezuela are low resource contexts. Okay, and so now to finish for tomorrow, we have speaking. As I said earlier today, We will explore how learners express, connect, and grow using their oral skills. So that's it for today, but we will continue tomorrow, of course. I will stop sharing here and I will stop recording.